time travel, hindsight is always 2020, right? In hindsight, I always know everything, of course. So for the little experiment we're doing is, you will have amnesia. You will forget everything. And the only thing you see in the year 2008, here today, is this one little chart. And now my question is, looking at this chart, this tiny little red chevron, the little arrow, which is mobile phones, would you have said mobile phones are going to take over the world? And the answer can only be no, because it's tiny. It makes no sense. So here's my question for you. Think for 1 second, just for yourself. Which year, same setup, no other information, and you have no hindsight. Which year would you have said mobile is going to take over the world? And we do a quick show of hands. Quick show, and you're like, already it's like, I'm ratting, I want to be like, let's do a quick show of hands. 2009, anyone? Show of hands? 2010. By the way, there's no right or wrong, so like, there's no, like, badness here. 2011. Okay, few. 2012. Yes. 2013 maybe. All right. I've done this experiment, this particular one, hundreds of times by now. I've done it with high school students in Lincoln, Nebraska in the United States, in the middle of nowhere. I've done it with Fortune 500 CEOs. The response, the median response is always the same. It's always 2012, just like you. And the reason why people do this is when you ask them is, well, they say, listen, Pascal, the jump from 2011 to 2012 is really big. You're already nodding here, I see you. Also, 2012, this is about, 20%, 25% or so of like total time. It feels significant. If you would have asked me, I would have said 2012, 100%. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you look at when the companies which were built on the idea, on the promise that mobile is taking over the world. So when you build a company where you say, this company only will exist if mobile is taking over the world. When these companies were founded, it's fascinating. Airbnb is founded in 2008, Uber 2009, WhatsApp 2009, Instagram 2010, this list goes on and on and on, and not just American companies, pretty much all over the world. We would have missed these companies not by 3 months, we would have missed them by 3 years. And now you might say, well, Pascal, but the first unicorns here in India came in 2012. We're good. We're kind of lagging behind a little bit. And my response to that is, yes, you were good in 2012. But I guarantee you that the next AI unicorn is already formed here, somewhere here. Like someone sits there, maybe one of you is writing the software for that AI unicorn right now. Right? Because the time spans, the gaps have become so short. And here's the interesting insight. Jobs to be done don't change. The needs we have, they don't change. What changes is the way we fulfill them. You always want to have water in your house. Of course. Right? It just might be different in how I get it into the house. You're still taking, in our example earlier, we talked about Kodak, Blockbuster, and Nokia, you're still taking pictures. They're just not on film. You're still watching a movie in the comfort of your home because that's what you like. It just doesn't come to you on a VHS video cassette, and you're still communicating on a device you're holding to your face. It just looks a little differently. And it's not just me who says this. This guy here, Jeff Bezos, co-founder or founder of Amazon, who I just want to point this out, happens to look a little bit like me. He said this 10 years ago. And it's really fascinating because I find like there's so many people who reference Jeff Bezos for all kinds of stuff. This year, nobody references. And I think it's the most important thing, maybe the most important thing he ever said. So let me just play this so you can hear it from himself.
I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And that is an interesting question. It's a very common one. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that that second question is actually the more important of the two.
So we like to ask that question, what's going to change? And I think it's an important question to ask because clearly it indicates what the future will look like. But the question you also, equally as important, need to ask is what's not going to change? It's really incredibly important. That's the reason why the way we look at disruption is we have this model we call state changes.
State changes is very simply is a concept we borrowed from the world of physics. If any one of you is a physics major, please forgive me. It's a gross oversimplification of a much more complex matter. But state changes is you take water. It's frozen, it's solid, you make it hotter. You increase the entropy technically. It becomes liquid, water. And then you increase the entropy further and it becomes gas. The in-between is called the state change. So you go from one state to the next. And the reason why we think this mental model works so well is the underlying molecule is always the same. It's always H2O. Regardless if it's frozen, if it's water or it's gas, it's always H2O. In our case, the underlying consumer need, the job to be done, doesn't change. It's always the same. And the other reason why we like this model is because the state changes don't happen on linear progressions. They happen on exponentially accelerating curves. So it's a good metaphor.